2 years from now, we'll be reaching the 800th anniversary of a document of quite remarkable significance, Magna Carta, extracted from King John by the barons in 1215. Magna Carta has two parts. One part is, or should be well known, it's the Charter of Liberties, widely and justly recognized as the foundations of our highest principles of freedom and justice. The other part has long been forgotten, and it may be of even greater importance. I'll come back to it later. The Charter of Liberties provides the origins of the concept of presumption of innocence, of due process. Its most famous part is Article 39, which I'll read. No free man shall be punished in any way, nor will we proceed against or prosecute him, except by lawful judgment of his peers and by the law of the land. That's 1215. Has a long history that enters in slightly different form into the U.S. Constitution, which says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law and a speedy and public trial by peers. Core of our concept of justice. Has restrictions. The term person in the Constitution, of course, doesn't mean persons. It does not include slaves, of course does not include Native Americans. It did not include women. Under the prevailing British common law of the day, women were not persons, they were property. The property of, a woman's property of her father, handed over to her husband. The post-Civil War, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, repeats that guarantee, but extends it beyond the limited concept of persons in the Constitution. Personhood was granted to slaves, freed slaves. In later years and up till the present, the term person has been both extended and narrowed by the courts. So it has been extended to include collectivist legal fictions that are established and maintained by state power and taxpayer subsidy called corporations. And it's been narrowed to explicitly exclude undocumented aliens. So person still doesn't mean person, unfortunately. Magna Carta had two components. One is the Charter of Liberties, famous one, which I discussed, the foundation of Anglo-American law. The other part is what was called the Charter of Forests. That was dedicated to protection of the commons from the ravages of the power centers of the day. That record is preserved for us in things like the Robin Hood myths. That's what they're about. What are the commons? Well, the commons that weren't just the forests, they were the source of sustenance for the general population. Food, fuel, welfare. And there's a classic image of, it goes back to the Bible, of widows gleaning things from the commons for fuel and food. That's what the commons were. They were very carefully nurtured and protected for centuries. Now, in capitalist ethics, there's a different concept. It's called the tragedy of the commons. That's familiar. The thesis is that if common possessions are left to the population, they'll be destroyed. So you have to privatize them. Then they'll be protected. That's capitalist ethics. Unless common possessions are privatized, they'll be destroyed. And there's a principle behind it. It's the principle that Adam Smith described as what he called the vile maxim of the masters of mankind: everything for ourselves and nothing for anyone else. That's the concept that has to be drilled into people's heads to make them total sociopaths. Reality is, of course, quite the opposite. The privatization leads to destruction of the commons in pursuit of the vile maxim. Well, what happened to the Charter of the Forests? That was an equal part of Magna Carta. It was dismantled with the rise of capitalism in England centuries ago by enclosures and other measures to privatize the commons. It was followed centuries later in the United States. This central part of Magna Carta has long been forgotten as we, in our brilliance, lead the way off the cliff like the proverbial lemmings.